Ever wondered what happens when modern jet fighters meet World War II prop planes? Or when Hollywood camera crews get too close to F-14 afterburners? The Final Countdown mixed military hardware with time travel madness, creating one of the most unusual productions in cinema history. From camera operators blown off aircraft carrier decks to profane signs hidden in cockpits, the making of this 1980 sci-fi thriller was as wild as its premise. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about The Final Countdown. Fact 1. Camera operators were blown across the deck. Twice. Filming The Final Countdown meant working around some of the most powerful machinery in the United States military, and the production crew learned just how dangerous that could be when jet exhaust literally sent their equipment and people flying across aircraft carrier decks on 2 separate occasions. The first incident happened during the opening sequence at Pearl Harbor Naval Station, where the filmmakers wanted to capture a dramatic F-14 Tomcat takeoff to establish the modern military setting of the story. They positioned a camera operator directly on the runway to get a low-angle shot that would showcase the fighter jet's raw power as it roared down the tarmac, but nobody fully anticipated just how much force those afterburners would generate. The moment the F-14 pilot hit full throttle, the superheated jet exhaust created a blast wave so powerful that it picked up both the camera and the operator and threw them completely off the runway, damaging the expensive equipment and forcing the director to rethink the entire shot from a safer distance and different angle. You'd think the crew would have learned their lesson after that first accident, but capturing authentic footage aboard the USS Nimitz required taking similar risks throughout production. The second incident occurred on the carrier's flight deck during routine filming of jet operations, when another cameraman got too close to an F-14 during engine run-up or taxi operations. The jet wash caught him completely off guard and literally swept him across the deck like he weighed nothing at all, sending him tumbling toward the edge of the carrier in what could have been a fatal 70-foot fall into the ocean below. Fortunately, the USS Nimitz flight deck is equipped with safety netting designed to catch tools, debris, and personnel before they go overboard, and those nets did exactly what they were designed to do, catching the cameraman before he plunged into the Pacific. These 2 incidents show just how committed the production team was to getting authentic footage, even when it meant putting themselves in genuinely life-threatening situations around military hardware that could easily kill someone with a single mistake. Fact 2. F-14S flew at stall speed to match World War II planes. The dogfight sequence in The Final Countdown presented filmmakers with a problem that seemed almost impossible to solve because modern fighter jets and World War II-era aircraft operate at completely different speeds and in entirely different ways. The F-14 Tomcat, one of the most advanced fighters of its time, cruises comfortably at speeds that would tear a 1940s propeller plane apart, while the converted AT-6 Texan trainers dressed up as Japanese Zeros could only reach maximum speeds of around 200 miles per hour when pushing their engines to the absolute limit. Getting both types of aircraft in the same shot without using special effects or miniatures meant the Navy pilots flying those F-14S had to perform some of the most technically demanding flying of their careers. To make the scene work, the Tomcat pilots had to slow their jets down to what's called stall speed, which is the absolute minimum velocity an aircraft can maintain before it literally falls out of the sky. At the same time, they extended the F-14's variable sweep wings all the way forward to their maximum position, which gave the jets more lift at those dangerously slow speeds, but also made them incredibly difficult to control. Meanwhile, the pilots flying the replica Zeros were doing exactly the opposite, pushing their throttles to maximum power and flying as fast as their modified trainers could possibly go. The result was this incredibly narrow window where both aircraft could stay in formation long enough for the cameras to capture usable footage. What makes this even more remarkable is that the pilots managed to pull off these maneuvers over open ocean with film crews aboard, all while maintaining the precise positioning needed to make the shots look dramatic and believable. The Tomcat pilots were essentially flying their multi-million-dollar jets at the edge of catastrophic failure, and one wrong move could have sent a $30 million fighter into the Pacific. The entire sequence was captured practically, with real aircraft and real pilots risking everything to create one of the most authentic aerial combat scenes ever filmed. Fact 3. A real World War II. Ace piloted the Zero. The production team of The Final Countdown didn't just want skilled stunt pilots to fly their replica Japanese Zero fighters. They wanted someone who had actually faced these planes in real combat during World War II, and they found exactly that person in Archie Donahue. Donahue wasn't just any veteran pilot who happened to know how to handle vintage aircraft. He was a genuine ace in a day, meaning he shot down 5 enemy planes in a single mission, which is one of the rarest achievements a fighter pilot can earn in combat. On October 24, 1942, while flying an F-4F Wildcat during the Battle of the Santa Cruz Islands, Donahue downed 5 Japanese aircraft in one sortie, earning him immediate ace status and a place in naval aviation history. Nearly 4 decades later, this same man who had fought against actual Zeros in the Pacific Theater found himself sitting in the cockpit of a replica Zero for a Hollywood movie, flying it in mock combat against modern F-14 Tomcats that represented the cutting edge of military technology in 1980. The historical irony of the situation was almost too perfect to believe. A pilot who had risked his life shooting down these exact aircraft during the war was now flying one for entertainment purposes, engaging in a fictional dogfight with jets that wouldn't have seemed possible during his combat days. Donahue's presence added an extraordinary layer of authenticity to the aerial sequences that no amount of special effects or careful choreography could replicate, because he understood these planes not just as machines, but as the deadly weapons they had been during the most intense naval air battles of the Second World War. His involvement turned what could have been just another Hollywood aerial stunt into something genuinely remarkable, bridging the gap between historical reality and science fiction fantasy in a way that gave the film's most spectacular scenes a connection to actual combat history. Fact 4. Jet wake. Nearly killed the Zero pilots. The aerial dogfight sequence in The Final Countdown wasn't just thrilling to watch, it was genuinely life-threatening to film. When the F-14 Tomcats made their first high-speed pass near the replica Japanese Zero fighters, nobody on the production fully understood just how dangerous the invisible wake turbulence from a modern jet fighter could be to a vintage prop plane flying nearby. The moment the F-14s roared past at combat speed, both AT-6 Texan aircraft that had been converted to look like Zeros were violently thrown out of control by the turbulent air left behind by the jets. The wake turbulence hit the smaller planes like an invisible sledgehammer, tossing them around the sky in ways that terrified both the pilots and the film crew watching from below. One of the Zero pilots experienced something even more bizarre during the chaos. His wristwatch was literally sucked off his arm and disappeared into the slipstream, and his communications headset was ripped right off his head and pulled out through the open canopy of his aircraft. The production immediately halted filming for the rest of the day after this near disaster. The pilots needed time to recover from the shock, and the filmmakers had to completely rethink how they would safely capture the dogfight footage without killing anyone in the process. This meant recalculating distances, adjusting flight paths, and ensuring the F-14s would never pass that close to the replica Zeros again during any subsequent filming runs. What makes this incident even more remarkable is that this kind of wake turbulence is completely invisible to the naked eye, making it impossible for pilots to see it coming or avoid it in real time. The production learned a harsh lesson about mixing aircraft from different eras. The sheer power difference between 1980s military jets and World War II-era aircraft was far more extreme than anyone had anticipated. Fact 5. The Navy recalled the ship for a failed hostage rescue. The production of The Final Countdown hit an unexpected roadblock when reality interfered with fiction in the most dramatic way possible. Filming aboard the USS Nimitz came to an abrupt halt in April of 1980 when the United States Navy suddenly recalled the aircraft carrier for an urgent military operation, forcing the cast and crew to pack up their equipment and evacuate the ship with little warning. The reason for the recall was Operation Eagle Claw, the attempted rescue of 52 American hostages held at the United States Embassy in Tehran, Iran. The mission, which took place on April 24th and 25th of 1980, ended in catastrophe when a helicopter collided with a transport aircraft at a remote desert staging area, killing 8 American servicemen and forcing the operation to be abandoned. The USS Nimitz was positioned in the Indian Ocean as part of the naval support for this mission, which meant that Hollywood's production schedule suddenly became irrelevant in the face of real-world crisis. This unexpected interruption left the filmmakers with incomplete footage and a serious logistical problem. They still needed additional shots of flight deck operations, interior scenes, and various establishing shots that required an actual aircraft carrier. Without the Nimitz available, the production team had to scramble for alternatives, eventually securing permission to film aboard the USS Kitty Hawk and other naval vessels to complete the missing sequences. The irony of the situation was not lost on anyone involved. Here was a movie about a modern aircraft carrier getting pulled into a historical military crisis, and the real carrier playing that role was suddenly pulled away for an actual military crisis. The failed rescue attempt became one of the most controversial moments of the Carter administration, while the film continued production by piecing together footage from multiple ships to create the illusion of a single vessel throughout the entire story. Fact 6. Kirk Douglas's son was the producer. The final countdown was truly a family affair in ways that most audiences never realized while watching it in theaters. Peter Douglas, one of Kirk Douglas's sons, wasn't just involved in the production. He was actually the driving creative force who brought the entire project to life from the very beginning. Peter served as the film's producer, which meant he was responsible for getting the script developed, securing the financing, and making all the crucial decisions that turned this ambitious time travel concept into an actual movie. But Peter didn't stay behind the scenes during filming, and if you watch closely, you can actually spot him on screen playing a small role as one of the ship's quartermasters. Having his son as the producer meant that Kirk Douglas came into the project under somewhat unusual circumstances compared to most Hollywood productions. Instead of being courted by studio executives or outside producers, Kirk was essentially being invited to star in his own son's passion project. Kirk took on the role of Captain Matthew Yelland, the commanding officer of the USS Nimitz, who faces the impossible decision of whether to intervene in the attack on Pearl Harbor. The character required Kirk to portray a seasoned military leader grappling with unprecedented moral and tactical dilemmas, and at 63 years old, he brought decades of experience to the role. What makes this family collaboration even more interesting is that the final countdown turned out to be Kirk Douglas's final major theatrical film involving naval warfare. While he continued acting for many more years in various projects, he never again appeared in another submarine or aircraft carrier movie on the big screen. The film essentially marked the end of an era for Kirk's involvement in military-themed productions, making the fact that he shared this experience with his son Peter all the more meaningful. The Douglas family legacy became permanently woven into this cult classic about time travel and military ethics, creating a unique footnote in Hollywood history that few fans of the film actually know about. Fact 7. Trauma's founder swore off Hollywood forever. Working behind the scenes on a big Hollywood production might sound glamorous, but for Lloyd Kaufman, it turned into a career-defining disaster that pushed him in the complete opposite direction. Kaufman worked as associate producer and unit production manager on the Woodstock film, a massive documentary project that should have been an incredible opportunity for a young filmmaker trying to break into the industry. Instead, the experience became so frustrating and disillusioning that he made a permanent decision. He would never work in traditional Hollywood again. The problems started with what Kaufman would later describe as dealing with flame-out bozo directors, a colorful way of expressing his frustration with the creative chaos and ego clashes that plagued the production. As someone responsible for managing the practical side of filmmaking, Kaufman found himself constantly battling against inefficiency and what he saw as needless complications created by the traditional studio system. The union regulations and bureaucratic red tape that came with working on a major production drove him particularly crazy, making even simple tasks feel impossibly complicated. This bitter experience didn't break Kaufman's spirit. Instead, it clarified exactly what kind of filmmaker he didn't want to be. Rather than continuing to climb the Hollywood ladder, he took everything he learned about what frustrated him and decided to do the exact opposite. A few years later, in 1974, Kaufman co-founded Trauma Entertainment, a fiercely independent film studio that would become legendary for its low-budget, transgressive movies and complete rejection of mainstream filmmaking conventions. Trauma became the anti-Hollywood, a place where Kaufman could make films his own way, without studio interference, union complications, or what he considered the wasteful inefficiency of big-budget productions. The studio would go on to create cult classics and launch careers, all built on the foundation of Kaufman's determination never to repeat the Woodstock experience. Sometimes the worst jobs teach you the most important lessons about what you actually want to do. Fact 8. F-14 pilots held up a profane sign at Catherine Ross. Behind the scenes of Top Gun, one of the most unexpected moments of tension didn't involve fighter jets or high-speed dogfights, but rather a profane message aimed at one of Hollywood's leading ladies. During production, the Navy pilots from Fighter Squadron 84, known as VF-84, were excited about the opportunity to meet actress Catherine Ross, who was visiting the set. The pilots, who were helping with the film's authenticity by flying the actual F-14 Tomcats used in various scenes, sent a request asking if Ross would meet them at their hotel. When the actress declined their invitation, the air crews decided to respond in a way that would make their feelings known to everyone on set. The next time cameras were rolling with the pilots in their cockpits, the crew members held up a large, crudely made sign that read, "Fuck you, Catherine, we didn't want to meet you anyway." The message was visible during filming, and the footage ended up in the dailies, which are the raw, unedited shots that the director and producers review each day after shooting. When Catherine Ross saw the footage, she was reportedly furious about the vulgar display. The incident became one of those notorious behind-the-scenes stories that revealed the sometimes rocky relationship between Hollywood productions and the military personnel who assisted them. What makes this moment particularly remarkable is that these weren't actors playing disgruntled sailors, but actual Navy pilots who felt comfortable enough to express their frustration so boldly during an official film production. The sign never made it into the final cut of the movie, of course, but it became part of Top Gun lore, illustrating the kind of unfiltered, brash attitude that the film itself celebrated in its portrayal of fighter pilots. The incident served as a reminder that working with real military personnel brought an unpredictable edge to the production that went far beyond scripted drama. Fact 9. The wrong ship enters Pearl Harbor. In the final moments of the final countdown, viewers watch as the USS Nimitz makes its triumphant return to Pearl Harbor, gliding past the USS Arizona Memorial in a powerful visual moment that bookends the film. But here's the thing. That's not actually the Nimitz you're seeing on screen. The production team pulled a fast one and used a completely different aircraft carrier, the USS Kitty Hawk, to film that closing shot. The reason behind this switcheroo was purely logistical and had everything to do with geography. At the time of filming in 1980, the real USS Nimitz was stationed thousands of miles away in the Atlantic Ocean, where it would remain until 1987. Moving a massive nuclear-powered supercarrier across the country just to film one scenic shot wasn't exactly practical, especially when the Navy had already been incredibly generous in providing access to the Nimitz for the majority of the production. So when it came time to capture that iconic Pearl Harbor entrance, the filmmakers turned to what was available locally, the USS Kitty Hawk, which happened to be in the Pacific Fleet and could easily sail into Hawaiian waters. For most viewers, the substitution goes completely unnoticed. Both ships are Kitty Hawk-class supercarriers with similar profiles, and unless you're familiar enough with naval vessels to spot the subtle differences in their island structures or deck configurations, the swap is essentially invisible. The shot works perfectly for what it needs to do dramatically, giving the film a sense of closure as the ship returns home after its bizarre journey through time. It's a reminder that even in a movie about time travel and alternate history, sometimes the biggest tricks happen right in front of our eyes, hiding in plain sight. Fact 10. The film's special effects budget ran out. By the time production wrapped on the final countdown, the filmmakers had made a critical mistake that would haunt the final cut of the film. They decided to save all the time storm visual effects work for the very end of the shoot, assuming they'd have plenty of budget left over to make it look spectacular. Unfortunately, that gamble backfired in a major way. After months of expensive filming aboard the USS Nimitz, paying for fuel, coordinating with the Navy, and capturing all that breathtaking aerial footage, the production's funds were almost completely drained. When it finally came time to create the swirling temporal vortex that sends the aircraft carrier back to 1941, there was barely any money left in the coffers. The producers knew they needed help, so they brought in Maurice Binder, the legendary designer who had created the iconic opening title sequences for countless James Bond films. Binder was a visual effects master known for his innovative work with light, silhouettes, and optical effects. On paper, this seemed like the perfect solution to elevate the time storm sequences and give them the polished cinematic quality the rest of the film had achieved. But even Binder's expertise couldn't overcome the reality of an empty bank account. The storm effects he delivered look shockingly primitive, especially when placed side by side with the gorgeous footage of F-14 Tomcats screaming through the sky and the massive Nimitz cutting through the ocean waves. The contrast is jarring. You go from watching real fighter jets performing incredible maneuvers in crystal clear detail to watching what essentially looks like swirling colored lights and basic optical effects that wouldn't have been out of place in a television movie from a decade earlier. It's a reminder that in filmmaking, sometimes saving the most important visual element for last is a recipe for disappointment, no matter how talented the people working on it might be. Fact 11. The novelization reveals aliens caused everything. Most fans of the final countdown know the film never fully explains why the USS Nimitz traveled back in time to 1941. The movie leaves the time travel phenomenon as a mysterious event, something that just happens without a clear cause. But if you had picked up Martin Caidin's official novelization of the film, you would have discovered a surprising answer that never made it to the screen. Aliens were responsible for everything. In the book version, Caidin revealed that extraterrestrial beings caused the time storm that sent the Nimitz back to Pearl Harbor. This wasn't just a throwaway detail either. The alien explanation was meant to set up a potential sequel that would have explored this otherworldly connection in much greater depth. The filmmakers and Caidin had apparently discussed continuing the story and diving deeper into why these beings would create such a dramatic disruption in history and what their ultimate purpose might have been. Of course, that sequel never happened, which means the alien angle remains one of the strangest footnotes in the film's history. The decision to leave this explanation out of the theatrical release was probably a smart move, since introducing extraterrestrials would have dramatically shifted the tone of what was essentially a military thriller about an impossible moral dilemma. The movie works better when the time travel remains unexplained and mysterious, letting audiences focus on the tension of whether the crew should intervene in history. Still, knowing that the official novelization pointed to aliens as the culprits adds a whole new layer to the story. It transforms the final countdown from a grounded what-if scenario into something closer to science fiction territory. For readers who wanted answers, Caidin provided them, even if those answers raised even more questions that would never be resolved. The alien reveal remains a curious piece of behind-the-scenes lore that most casual fans of the film have never encountered. Fact 12. 48 real Navy personnel were credited as actors. When you watch the final countdown, you're not just seeing professional actors pretending to be sailors and Marines. 48 real Navy personnel from the USS Nimitz received official screen credits for their work in the film, appearing as extras, background artists, and in some cases, actors with actual speaking roles. This wasn't just a handful of sailors standing quietly in the background either. These were genuine crew members who brought an authenticity to the film that would have been nearly impossible to replicate with civilian actors or extras. The decision to use real Nimitz personnel gave the movie an unprecedented level of realism when it came to portraying aircraft carrier operations. These sailors and Marines knew exactly how to move around the ship, how to handle equipment, and how to interact with each other in ways that felt completely natural because it was their everyday reality. When you see crew members working on the flight deck, manning their stations, or going about their duties in various scenes throughout the film, many of those people were actually doing their real jobs, just with cameras rolling. Some of the 48 credited Navy personnel even had speaking parts, which added another layer of authenticity to the production. Instead of hiring actors to deliver technical dialogue about carrier operations or military procedures, the filmmakers could rely on people who actually understood what they were talking about and could deliver those lines with genuine authority and confidence. This approach also helped the production in practical ways, since the real crew members were already familiar with the ship's layout and safety protocols. They didn't need extensive training or rehearsal to look like they belonged on a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier because they genuinely did belong there. The result is a film where the military environment feels completely believable and lived in, thanks in large part to the contributions of these 48 sailors and Marines who made the transition from serving their country to serving the camera. Fact 13, the most dangerous stunt was 100 feet above water. One of the most thrilling shots in the final countdown came at a serious cost to safety, and it involved pushing a $40 million F-14 Tomcat fighter jet to the absolute edge of what it could handle. Pilot Richard Farrell, who went by the call sign Fox, executed what's known as a hammerhead maneuver that brought him dangerously close to the ocean surface, pulling out at just 100 feet above the water. To put that in perspective, 100 feet is roughly the height of a 10-story building, which sounds like a lot until you're traveling at high speed in a jet that weighs over 30 tons. The maneuver itself was incredibly risky because Farrell was operating right at the limits of the F-14's performance envelope. A hammerhead involves flying straight up until the aircraft nearly stalls, then pivoting and diving back down, which requires absolute precision and perfect timing. Any miscalculation at that altitude would have been catastrophic, leaving virtually no room for error or recovery. The shot was so low to the water that the jet actually kicked up massive sprays of seawater as it screamed past, creating a dramatic visual effect that made it into the final film and became one of the most memorable sequences. What makes this stunt even more remarkable is that there were no computer-generated effects to fall back on if something went wrong. Everything had to be captured in real time with real aircraft, real pilots, and real danger. Farrell knew exactly what he was doing and had the skill to pull it off, but the margin between an incredible cinematic moment and a disaster was measured in just a few feet and a fraction of a second. The filmmakers got their iconic shot, and audiences got to witness a level of aerial action that would be nearly impossible to replicate today without digital assistance. Fact 14. The Japanese pilot was actually Korean. The actor who played the captured Japanese Zero pilot in the final countdown wasn't actually Japanese at all. Soon Taek. Oh, who portrayed Commander Samura in the film, was born in Korea, which might seem like an odd casting choice at first glance. However, this detail is actually more historically accurate than many viewers might realize. From 1905 to 1945, Korea was under Japanese colonial rule as part of the Japanese Empire. During this period, thousands of Koreans were conscripted or volunteered to serve in Japan's military forces, including the Imperial Japanese Navy and Army. These Korean servicemen fought alongside Japanese soldiers throughout World War II, meaning that a Korean pilot flying a Zero fighter during the attack on Pearl Harbor would have been entirely plausible from a historical standpoint. Soon Taek-oh brought a strong presence to the role of Samura, playing the defiant and proud pilot who refuses to cooperate with his American captors aboard the Nimitz. His performance added authenticity to the film's depiction of the cultural and ideological clash between the 1941 mindset and the modern military personnel who captured him. The character becomes a symbol of the broader conflict, representing the enemy force that the Nimitz crew is debating whether to engage and potentially alter history. What makes this casting detail interesting is that it accidentally reflects a reality that many people don't know about World War II. The Japanese military included soldiers from various parts of the empire, not just ethnic Japanese from the home islands. While Hollywood has often been criticized for inaccurate or insensitive casting choices when it comes to Asian roles, in this particular case, having a Korean actor play a Japanese pilot actually mirrors the complex demographics of Japan's wartime military forces, even if that wasn't the filmmaker's intentional reasoning behind the casting decision. Fact 15. The Zeros nearly collided. During the dogfight. The dogfight sequence in the final countdown stands out as one of the most thrilling aerial battles ever filmed for a Hollywood production. But what audiences don't realize is that the scene nearly ended in disaster. At the very end of the battle, the two AT-6 Texan aircraft that were painted and modified to look like Japanese Zeros came dangerously close to colliding in midair, and the only thing that prevented a catastrophic crash was pure luck. The two planes were performing complex maneuvers during the climactic moments of the fight, spinning and diving through the sky as the cameras captured every angle. As the sequence reached its conclusion, both aircraft went into spins that brought them uncomfortably close to each other. The pilots had not planned this near miss, and it wasn't part of the choreography for the scene. Instead, the planes just happened to spin away from each other at the last possible moment, narrowly avoiding what could have been a tragedy that would have killed both pilots and likely ended production on the film entirely. This unplanned moment of danger highlights just how risky it was to film authentic aerial combat using real aircraft and real pilots performing genuine stunts in the sky. Unlike modern productions that rely heavily on computer effects or controlled studio environments, the final countdown put its stunt pilots in genuinely dangerous situations to capture the realism that makes the dogfight so memorable. The fact that the near collision happened during one of Hollywood's most ambitious aerial sequences makes it even more remarkable, since the production was already pushing the boundaries of what was considered safe and practical for a film shoot. The pilots walked away unharmed. The footage made it into the final cut, and audiences remained completely unaware of how close the scene came to ending in tragedy.